The helicopter blades cut through the humid air above the Pacific Ocean as Captain Marcus Rodriguez scanned the horizon through his binoculars. The SEAL team leader had been in countless operations, but today felt different. Today, they were expecting their new pilot for Operation Neptune's Gate, a classified mission that would test every skill they possessed. Rodriguez lowered his binoculars and checked his watch. The new pilot was supposed to arrive at 0800 hours sharp. It was now 0759, and there was no sign of the incoming aircraft. His jaw tightened. Punctuality wasn't just important in the Navy, it was life or death. "Sir, I've got movement on the radar," called out Petty Officer Williams from the communication station. Single aircraft, approaching from the northeast. Rodriguez raised his binoculars again. In the distance, a sleek helicopter emerged from the morning haze. The pilot was flying low and fast, exactly as the mission parameters required. But something about the approach seemed different. The aircraft moved with a precision that caught his attention, making subtle corrections that showed real skill. The helicopter touched down on the landing pad with barely a whisper. Rodriguez had seen hundreds of landings in his 20-year career, but this one was flawless. No bounce, no adjustment, just smooth contact with the deck. He found himself nodding with approval before catching himself. The engine wound down, and Rodriguez waited for the pilot to emerge. The SEAL team gathered around, curious to meet the aviator who would be flying them into danger zones for the next 6 months. They had heard rumors about this pilot, supposedly one of the best in the Navy, with commendations from 3 different commanding officers. The cockpit door opened, and a figure in full flight gear stepped out. Rodriguez couldn't see the pilot's face behind the helmet and visor, but he noticed the confident way the aviator moved. No hesitation, no looking around nervously. This pilot belonged here. "Captain Rodriguez?" The voice that came through the comm system was clear and professional. "That's correct. You must be our new pilot. Welcome aboard." The figure reached up and removed the helmet, and Rodriguez felt his assumptions crumble. Long dark hair fell free as Lieutenant Sarah Chun turned to face him. Her brown eyes were steady and alert, and she extended her hand with the same confidence she had shown her landing. Rodriguez recovered quickly, but he caught the surprised looks on his team members' faces. In their line of work, female pilots were still uncommon, especially on special operations teams. He had worked with women before, some of the finest soldiers he had ever known, but his team was used to a certain dynamic. "Lieutenant Chun," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "Your reputation precedes you. I've read your file." "Thank you, sir. I'm ready to get started whenever you are." Rodriguez studied her for a moment. Sarah Chun stood about 5 feet 6 inches tall, with an athletic build that spoke of serious training. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, her bearing confident, but not cocky. Everything about her suggested competence, but Rodriguez knew that competence had to be proven in the field. "Tell me about your experience, Lieutenant." Sarah's response was immediate and precise. 4 years flying combat missions in Afghanistan. 2 years as a test pilot for experimental aircraft. I've completed advanced tactical training at Top Gun, and I'm certified for night operations, low-altitude flying, and emergency extractions. The credentials were impressive, but Rodriguez had learned not to trust paper qualifications. Real skill showed itself under pressure, and he intended to find out exactly what this pilot was made of. "We'll be conducting training exercises all week," he said, "starting tomorrow morning at 0600. I hope you're ready for some challenging scenarios." "I wouldn't expect anything less, sir." Rodriguez dismissed the team, but he lingered on the deck as Sarah conducted her post-flight checks. He watched her work methodically through the aircraft systems, making notes in her logbook. Every movement was purposeful and professional. Chief Petty Officer Tom Harrison approached Rodriguez as Sarah finished her inspection. Harrison was Rodriguez's second-in-command, a veteran with 15 years of special operations experience. "So, what do you think, Captain?" Harrison asked quietly. Rodriguez considered the question. Her flying is exceptional. But flying and combat operations are two different things. The men are going to need some time to adjust. The men will adjust, or they'll find themselves on different assignments, Rodriguez said firmly. I don't care if our pilot is male, female, or from Mars, as long as they can do the job. Harrison nodded. Understood, sir. Rodriguez walked back toward the command center, but his mind was already working through the challenges ahead. Sarah Chun would need to prove herself not just to him, but to every member of his team. In special operations, trust wasn't given. It was earned through shared risk and demonstrated competence. That evening, Rodriguez found himself reviewing Sarah's personnel file again. Her record was outstanding. She had graduated second in her class from flight school, earned 3 Distinguished Service Medals, and received glowing recommendations from every commanding officer she had served under. One notation caught his attention. Lieutenant Chen consistently performs above expectations under high-stress conditions. Her tactical thinking and split-second decision-making abilities make her an invaluable asset to any mission. The comment came from Colonel James Wright, a man Rodriguez knew and respected. Wright didn't give praise lightly, which made Rodriguez curious about what Sarah Chun had done to earn such strong endorsement. Rodriguez closed the file and leaned back in his chair. Tomorrow would begin a series of tests that would reveal whether Sarah Chun could handle the unique pressures of special operations. Flying was only part of the job. She would need to demonstrate tactical thinking, adaptability, and the ability to function as part of a tight-knit team. The SEAL captain had built his career on making accurate assessments of personnel. He could usually tell within the first week whether someone would succeed or fail in special operations. Something about Sarah Chun intrigued him, though he couldn't put his finger on exactly what it was. Rodriguez stood and walked to the window overlooking the flight deck. Sarah's helicopter sat secured for the night, but he could see light coming from the aircraft maintenance hangar. He suspected their new pilot was still working, probably going over every system twice to ensure everything was perfect for tomorrow's training. The dedication was obvious, but dedication alone wouldn't be enough. Tomorrow would bring the first real test, and Rodriguez planned to push Sarah Chun harder than she had ever been pushed before. If she was going to be flying his team into dangerous situations, he needed to know exactly what her limits were. Rodriguez had lost good people to pilot error before. A moment's hesitation, a wrong decision, or inadequate skill could cost lives. He wasn't about to trust his team's safety to anyone who couldn't handle pressure, regardless of their credentials or recommendations. As he prepared for bed, Rodriguez found himself anticipating the morning's exercises with unusual interest. Sarah Chun had made an impressive first impression, but first impressions could be deceiving. Tomorrow would begin the process of discovering who she really was under pressure. The SEAL captain had spent his career around exceptional people, but something told him that Lieutenant Sarah Chun might surprise them all. Whether that surprise would be positive or negative remained to be seen. Rodriguez fell asleep thinking about the challenges ahead, wondering if his new pilot would prove worthy of the trust his team would need to place in her. The morning would bring answers, and Rodriguez was ready to find out exactly what Lieutenant Sarah Chun was made of. The alarm sounded at 0530, and Rodriguez was already dressed when Sarah appeared at the flight line 15 minutes early. She had beaten the entire SEAL team to the aircraft, which impressed him more than he cared to admit. The morning air was crisp, and fog hung low over the ocean, creating challenging visibility conditions. "Morning, Lieutenant," Rodriguez said as he approached. "Ready for your first training exercise?" "Yes, sir. I've reviewed the mission parameters and checked weather conditions. We're looking at limited visibility with winds gusting to 25 knots. Rodriguez nodded. The conditions were deliberately challenging, designed to test pilot skill under adverse circumstances. Many experienced aviators would request a delay with weather like this, but Sarah seemed ready to proceed. "Today's scenario involves a simulated hostage rescue," Rodriguez explained. "You'll need to insert my team at 3 different locations, maintain station under fire, and extract us from a hot landing zone. Think you can handle it? I'll get your team where they need to go, sir." The confidence in her voice was reassuring, but Rodriguez had heard confident pilots before. Talk was easy. Performance under pressure was what mattered. The SEAL team assembled around the aircraft as Sarah began her pre-flight checks. Rodriguez watched his men carefully. They were professional soldiers, but he could sense their uncertainty. Working with a new team member always created tension, and the fact that their pilot was female added another layer of complexity. Sergeant First Class Mike Torres, the team's demolitions expert, voiced what several others were thinking. "Captain, are we sure about this?" No disrespect to the lieutenant, but special ops flying is different from regular missions. Rodriguez understood the concern, but his response was firm. "Lieutenant Shun has been assigned to this team based on her qualifications. We'll evaluate her performance, just like we would any new team member." Sarah finished her checks and signaled readiness. Rodriguez gathered his team for final briefing. Then they boarded the aircraft. As the helicopter lifted off, Rodriguez positioned himself where he could observe both Sarah's flying and his team's reactions. The fog was thicker than expected, reducing visibility to less than half a mile. Sarah flew by instruments, making smooth corrections as wind gusts tried to push the aircraft off course. Rodriguez had flown with dozens of pilots, and he could immediately tell that Sarah's skill level was exceptional. "First insertion point in 2 minutes," Sarah announced through the intercom. "Be advised, the landing zone is smaller than anticipated due to recent construction." Rodriguez looked out the window and cursed silently. The intelligence reports had missed a new building that significantly reduced the available landing space. Many pilots would abort and find an alternate location, but Sarah seemed to be analyzing the situation. "I can put you down, but it'll be tight," she said calmly. "Your call, Captain." Rodriguez made a quick decision. "Take us in." What happened next demonstrated why Sarah Chun had earned such strong recommendations. She brought the helicopter down in a space that seemed impossibly small, using every inch of available room. The landing was so precise that the team barely felt the aircraft touch ground. 30 seconds on deck, Rodriguez announced, and his team fast-roped to the ground with practiced efficiency. As the last man touched down, Sarah lifted off immediately, gaining altitude and moving to a safe distance to await the next phase. Rodriguez's opinion of his new pilot was rapidly changing. The landing had required exceptional skill and judgment, and Sarah had executed it flawlessly under challenging conditions. The exercise continued with 2 more insertions, each presenting unique challenges. Sarah adapted to every situation, whether it was navigating around unexpected obstacles or adjusting for changing weather conditions. Her communication was clear and professional, and she anticipated the team's needs without being prompted. The final phase involved extraction from a simulated combat zone. Rodriguez's team had to reach the pickup point while under simulated enemy fire, and Sarah would need to perform a combat extraction under pressure. "Phoenix Base, this is Eagle 1, Rodriguez called over the radio. "We're taking fire and need immediate extraction." "Copy, Phoenix Base. I see your smoke signal, coming in from the north." Rodriguez watched as Sarah's helicopter emerged from the fog bank, flying low and fast toward their position. Blank ammunition cracked around them as the exercise controllers maintained realistic pressure. This was the moment when many pilots would hesitate or make mistakes under simulated combat stress. Sarah brought the aircraft in perfectly, hovering just long enough for the team to board before pulling away sharply. Rodriguez felt the helicopter bank hard left as Sarah executed an evasive maneuver that threw off the simulated enemy fire. "All aboard," Rodriguez confirmed. "Nice flying, Lieutenant." "Thank you, sir." Setting course for base. As they flew back to the ship, Rodriguez noticed that his team members were no longer exchanging doubtful glances. Sarah's performance had spoken louder than any credentials could. She had proven herself under pressure, demonstrating the kind of skill and composure that special operations demanded. Chief Harrison approached Rodriguez as they landed. "That was impressive flying, Captain. She handled those conditions better than most pilots I've worked with." Rodriguez agreed, but he wasn't ready to declare victory yet. One successful training exercise was a good start, but sustained performance under various conditions would be the real test. Over the following days, Rodriguez put Sarah through increasingly complex scenarios. Night operations, emergency landings, formations flying with other aircraft, and high-stress combat simulations. Each challenge revealed new aspects of her skill and character. During a particularly difficult night exercise, Sarah had to navigate through a storm while maintaining radio silence. The conditions were brutal, with lightning, heavy rain, and severe turbulence. Rodriguez watched her work through the challenges methodically, never showing signs of panic or uncertainty. "How are we doing up there, Lieutenant?" he asked during a brief break in the weather. "All systems normal, sir. We'll reach the target area in 12 minutes. Her voice was as calm as if they were flying on a clear day. Rodriguez had to admit that Sarah Chun possessed something special, the ability to remain composed under extreme pressure while maintaining peak performance. The turning point came during their 4th day of training. Rodriguez had designed a scenario that combined multiple challenges: poor weather, mechanical problems, and time pressure. Sarah would need to deal with a simulated engine malfunction while inserting the team into a tight landing zone during a thunderstorm. "Phoenix Base, we're showing engine trouble," Sarah announced as planned. "Oil pressure is dropping on the primary engine." Rodriguez watched her go through emergency procedures while continuing to fly the mission. Her hands moved efficiently across the controls, shutting down the affected systems while compensating with backup power. "Can you continue the mission?" Rodriguez asked. "Affirmative. We're running on reduced power, but I can't complete the insertion." The landing zone was on a narrow beach surrounded by rocky cliffs. With one engine down, Sarah would have minimal margin for error. Rodriguez was prepared to abort the exercise if conditions became too dangerous, but Sarah seemed confident in her abilities. The approach was textbook perfect. Sarah used the reduced power efficiently, making precise calculations for wind, weight, and available space. The helicopter touched down exactly where it needed to, allowing the team to disembark quickly. "Outstanding work, Lieutenant," Rodriguez said as they lifted off. "That was professional-level flying under extremely difficult conditions." "Just doing my job, sir." Rodriguez realized that Sarah Chun had passed every test he could devise. Her flying skills were exceptional, but more importantly, she possessed the mental toughness and adaptability that special operations required. She had earned his respect and, more crucially, the respect of his team. Sergeant Torres approached Rodriguez after the exercise. "Captain, I owe the lieutenant an apology. I was wrong to doubt her abilities. She's as good as any pilot I've worked with." Rodriguez wasn't surprised by the admission. Sarah's performance had been consistently outstanding, and the team had witnessed her skills firsthand. Professional soldiers recognize competence when they saw it, and Sarah Chun had demonstrated competence at the highest level. That evening, Rodriguez found Sarah in the maintenance hangar, working with the ground crew to inspect the aircraft. Even after completing a perfect training exercise, she was ensuring that every system was functioning properly for the next day's operations. "Lieutenant, you don't need to personally supervise maintenance. We have qualified personnel for that." Sarah looked up from the engine compartment. "I know, sir, but I like to understand every aspect of the aircraft I'm flying. If something goes wrong in the air, I want to know exactly what my options are." Rodriguez nodded approvingly. The attention to detail was exactly what he wanted to see from his team members. Sarah Chun wasn't just an exceptional pilot. She was a professional who took personal responsibility for her equipment and her mission. "How are you feeling about the training so far?" Rodriguez asked. "Challenging but fair, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to prove myself." Rodriguez studied her expression. There was no resentment about the intensive testing, no complaint about the demanding standards. Sarah understood that trust had to be earned, and she was willing to do whatever was necessary to earn it. You've done well, Lieutenant. The team is starting to trust you, which is the most important thing in this business. Thank you, sir. I won't let them down. Rodriguez believed her. Sarah Chun had demonstrated something rare, the combination of exceptional technical skill and the character necessary for special operations. She had proven herself worthy of the trust his team would place in her, and Rodriguez felt confident about moving forward with their real mission. The week of training had revealed exactly what kind of person Lieutenant Sarah Chun was, a professional who refused to accept anything less than excellence from herself. Rodriguez had searched for a pilot who could handle the demands of special operations, and he had found someone who exceeded even his highest expectations. 3 weeks after completing training, Rodriguez received the call he had been expecting. Operation Neptune's Gate was approved for execution, and his team would deploy within 48 hours. The mission involved extracting a captured intelligence officer from a terrorist compound deep in hostile territory. Everything they had trained for would be put to the ultimate test. Rodriguez gathered his team for the final briefing. The compound was located in mountainous terrain, surrounded by anti-aircraft defenses and enemy patrols. The extraction would require precise timing, exceptional flying skills, and nerves of steel. Any mistake could result in the loss of the hostage and the entire team. The target is being held in a fortified compound approximately 200 miles inland, Rodriguez explained, pointing to satellite images on the screen. Intelligence indicates heavy security, including surface-to-air missiles and at least 50 armed guards. Sarah studied the aerial photographs carefully. The compound was situated on a narrow plateau, surrounded by steep cliffs and dense forest. The landing zone would be extremely small, with no room for error during approach or departure. "What's our window for extraction?" she asked. 15 minutes maximum, Rodriguez replied. "Any longer, and enemy reinforcements will arrive. The hostage is being held in the central building here." He indicated a concrete structure in the middle of the compound. Sarah nodded, already calculating approach angles and escape routes. The mission would push every skill she possessed to its absolute limit, but she felt ready for the challenge. "Weather conditions?" she inquired. "Clear skies, light winds. That's the good news. The bad news is that we'll be flying at night with minimal illumination. We can't risk using searchlights until we're directly over the target." Rodriguez continued the briefing, covering every aspect of the mission in detail. Sarah listened intently, asking specific questions about timing, communication protocols, and emergency procedures. Her preparation was thorough and professional, exactly what Rodriguez expected from his team members. 2 days later, Sarah's helicopter lifted off from the carrier deck at 2,200 hours. The aircraft was specially configured for the mission, with enhanced armor plating, electronic countermeasures, and extended fuel tanks. Every system had been checked and double-checked. The flight to the target area took 3 hours, navigating through treacherous mountain passes in complete darkness. Sarah flew using night vision equipment and GPS navigation, maintaining strict radio silence to avoid detection. Rodriguez watched her work with growing admiration for her skill and composure. "Target area in sight," Sarah whispered into her microphone as the compound appeared in the distance. Beginning approach. The compound was exactly as described in the intelligence reports, a fortress-like structure carved into the mountainside. Guard towers dotted the perimeter, and Rodriguez could see armed sentries moving between buildings. Security was tight, just as expected. Sarah began her descent, using the natural terrain to mask their approach. She flew the helicopter between mountain peaks, staying below radar coverage while navigating toward the landing zone. The flying required absolute precision, with rocky cliffs on both sides and no margin for error. 30 seconds to insertion, she announced softly. Rodriguez's team prepared for immediate deployment. They had rehearsed this moment dozens of times, but everyone understood that training was different from real combat. Lives depended on perfect execution. Sarah brought the helicopter down onto the narrow landing zone with remarkable skill. The space was even tighter than the satellite photos had suggested, with barely enough room for the aircraft. Rodriguez felt the wheels touch solid ground and immediately gave the signal for deployment. The SEAL team fast-roped to the ground in complete silence, disappearing into the shadows around the compound. Sarah lifted off immediately, moving to a concealed position where she could monitor communications and prepare for emergency extraction if needed. Rodriguez and his team moved through the compound with practiced stealth. They had studied the layout for weeks, and every man knew his role precisely. The guards were exactly where intelligence had predicted, and the team neutralized them quietly as they advanced toward the central building. "Phoenix Base, we have eyes on the target building," Rodriguez whispered into his radio. "Beginning final approach." "Copy, Phoenix Base," Sarah replied from her concealed position. "All clear for my position. No sign of reinforcements." The extraction of the hostage went according to plan. Rodriguez's team breached the building, eliminated the guards, and secured the intelligence officer within 8 minutes. The rescued man was weak but mobile, able to move under his own power with assistance. "Phoenix Base to Eagle 1, Rodriguez called. Package secured. Request immediate extraction." "Copy, Phoenix Base. Coming to get you now." Sarah's helicopter emerged from behind the mountain ridge like a ghost in the night. She had been monitoring enemy radio traffic and knew that reinforcements were already mobilizing. Time was running short, and the extraction would need to be executed flawlessly. The landing zone was now under partial illumination from compound security lights, making the helicopter an easy target for enemy gunfire. Sarah would need to land quickly, load the team, and escape before the situation became impossible. As Sarah approached the landing zone, automatic weapons fire erupted from multiple positions around the compound. Tracer rounds streaked through the darkness, some passing uncomfortably close to the aircraft. Rodriguez could hear bullets striking the helicopter's armor plating. "Taking fire from multiple positions," Sarah reported calmly. "Coming in anyway." What happened next would become legendary among special operations units. Sarah flew the helicopter directly into the gunfire, using evasive maneuvers to avoid the heaviest concentrations while maintaining course toward the landing zone. Her flying was so precise and aggressive that the enemy gunners couldn't establish consistent targeting. The helicopter touched down exactly on target, and Rodriguez's team rushed aboard with their rescued hostage. The entire loading process took less than 30 seconds, but enemy fire was intensifying by the moment. "Everyone aboard," Rodriguez confirmed. "Get us out of here." Sarah didn't need encouragement. The helicopter lifted off immediately, banking hard left as she executed a combat departure that threw off enemy targeting. More gunfire erupted from the compound, but Sarah was already accelerating away from the landing zone. "Eagle 1 to base. Package delivered," she announced once they were clear of immediate danger. "All personnel aboard and secure." The flight back to the carrier was tense, but uneventful. Sarah maintained maximum speed while monitoring radar for any signs of pursuit aircraft. Her flying remained steady and professional despite the adrenaline of combat. As they approached the carrier, Rodriguez reflected on what had just happened. Sarah Chun had flown them into and out of a heavily defended enemy compound under intense fire, executing every maneuver perfectly. Her courage and skill had made the mission possible. "Outstanding flying tonight, Lieutenant," he said as they prepared for landing. "You saved lives with that performance." "Just doing my job, sir." Rodriguez smiled at the characteristic response. Sarah Chun had proven herself beyond any doubt, demonstrating that she belonged among the elite pilots who supported special operations. She had earned her place through skill, courage, and unwavering professionalism. The debriefing lasted several hours, with every aspect of the mission analyzed in detail. Sarah's flying received special commendation from the mission commanders, who recognized that her exceptional performance had been crucial to to the operation's success. Chief Harrison approached Rodriguez as the debriefing concluded. "Captain, I have to say that Lieutenant Chun exceeded every expectation tonight. Her flying under fire was some of the best I've ever seen." Rodriguez agreed completely. Sarah had faced the ultimate test and passed with flying colors. She had proven that gender was irrelevant when it came to combat effectiveness. Only skill and character mattered. Over the following months, Sarah flew numerous missions with Rodriguez's team. Each operation reinforced her reputation as an exceptional pilot who could be trusted in any situation. She became an integral part of the team, respected by every member for her professionalism and competence. The SEAL community was small and tight-knit, and word of Sarah's abilities spread quickly. Other special operations units began requesting her services, recognizing that she possessed the rare combination of technical skill and mental toughness that their missions required. Rodriguez watched with satisfaction as Sarah's career flourished. She received multiple commendations for her service, including a distinguished flying cross for her performance during Operation Neptune's Gate. More importantly, she had broken barriers and opened doors for other women seeking careers in special operations aviation. Looking back on that first day, when Sarah had stepped out of her helicopter, Rodriguez realized how wrong his initial assumptions had been. He had been searching for a pilot who could handle the demands of special operations, and he had found someone who redefined what excellence looked like. Sarah Chun had proven that competence and courage knew no gender boundaries. She had earned her place among the military's elite through demonstrated performance under the most challenging conditions imaginable. The SEAL captain had searched for a pilot, and Lieutenant Sarah Chun had stood up and proved them all wrong about what was possible. Rodriguez's team had gained more than just an exceptional pilot. They had gained a teammate who embodied the highest standards of military professionalism. Sarah Chun had proven that when given the opportunity, talent and dedication would always triumph over prejudice and preconceptions. The mission had been a complete success, and Rodriguez knew that future operations would benefit from Sarah's exceptional skills and unwavering commitment to excellence. She had searched for acceptance and had instead earned something far more valuable: the unqualified respect of her peers and superiors. Lieutenant Sarah Chun had proven them all wrong, and in doing so, had proven herself right.